Good morning. Stan Stahl here with SecureTheVillage, September 8th. We're going to be talking about securing the human today, so let's kind of jump in on that. Let's see, let's get this moving. There we go. This episode of Secure the Village, this webinar is being brought to you by first my company, Citadel Information Group, and the law firm of Mangels, Butler, and Mitchell, one of whose partners, Bob Braun, is a guest today. So, who we have? We got Bob, who's co-chair of the Cybersecurity and Privacy Group at Mangels, Butler, and Mitchell, and my partner, Kimberly Pease, who's vice president of Citadel Information Group. You want to each say a couple of words about who you are and kind of what your kind of role is.
Kimberly, you first.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Stan and Bob, for participating today. It's very exciting to support Secure the Village and a topic that is near and dear to my heart, which is the human factor of information security.
Very good. Bob?
I would just, I'd also say that I think I'm very glad that people are coming to see this. I think a lot of time that we ignore the importance of the human factor in security and leave it to technology. And as we'll talk about today, that's just not something that is an effective approach.
So very true. Well said. And we're going to loop back on that soon. So today's topics, we're first going to talk a little bit about social engineering, this whole idea of exploiting human weakness. We'll then talk about humans, as you talk about it, Kimberly, regularly, the first line of defense. And then we'll talk to the leadership team. And our perspective in putting this webinar series together is that we're speaking to the leadership team and the executives who have to empower, embrace, and support the leadership team. So we'll be talking to you as the leadership team, the things you need to do to turn your people and organizations into cyber guardians, which is the kind of the mantra, if you will, of Secure the Village. We're actually going to get started a few hundred years ago. Little known historical fact that the British, in fact, used social engineering to beat the French in the Battle of Quebec in 1759. That's the event that basically gave Britain control of the new the America, the New World, if you will. What they did, what the British did, you're looking at a map, a drawing, a painting of Quebec City, and behind it, as you see off to the left, are what's called the Plains of Abraham. Well, the way the British won this battle is they sent ships downstream, and you can see it off the left of the screen of the painting, disguised as French supply ships. And when the Brits start climbing up the hill, getting to the Plains of Abraham, they're, of course, noticed by the French, who speak to them in French, and what are you doing here? And history's unclear whether it was somebody named Captain Fraser or somebody named Captain Donald MacDonald of the 78th Fraser Highlanders, but whichever it was, they answered the French in perfect French. And so the French thought, oh, these are French, not English, and they let them in, and the battle was over almost before it started. That's social engineering.
Why my father insisted I learn French.
Yes, right. Well, yeah, I'm old enough that I was stuck in that Latin world of languages. What's the old joke about speaking any language but Greek? But we're not going to go there. Instead, we're going to go to the modern social engineering 2018, where if you look at the 2018 data breach investigations report from Verizon, more than 90% of malware is delivered via email. And Kim, you and I had this confirmed yesterday. We had breakfast with a colleague who works with one of the big international banks. They have, what did he say, 3,000 cybersecurity professionals working for them, and they get attacked and they get infiltrated regularly because stuff comes in, it gets past their systems, and then these 3,000 people in part have to go clean it up. And what he said to us, names, we can't mention names, of course, but he said that over 90% of their breaches come from the outside. And if you look at the other statistics on here, it's particularly bad for the small and medium-sized businesses that make up so much of the economic infrastructure of our city, of our community. So part of what this means, and it takes us to this next slide, that cybersecurity is everyone's job. This is a new publication by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, their National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, the working group. It's still a draft. It's on our resource kit, so you can go to it, read it, download it, but also make comments back to them. They're in the process of finalizing this stuff. So, and it's a good start, Bob. So turning it over to you kind of to get this discussion started. You're an attorney, and yet if you look at our resource kit, you've got a couple of articles there that are all about securing the human factor in security. There's a video you and Mike, your partner, put together, things like that. Why is it that you, an attorney, instead of, you could be writing papers on legal aspects of this stuff, you've chosen to write on the human factor? What's going on here?
Well, Stan, I think it's true. Most of the lawyers that you deal with deal in compliance issues, and that's a comfort area for us. And the question is whether an enterprise has achieved compliance with policy, with law and regulation, and adopted the policies and procedures. And the reason is that goes to our desire to limit liability, because if we say, well, you have the right procedures, you have the right policies, then ideally you won't be held liable, or your liability will be limited. The fact is that while that is fine, and we do a lot of that's a big part of our business, we are great believers in real security. And real security does not come simply from compliance. Compliance are documents and procedures, but they don't necessarily achieve security. As I've mentioned before, and Kimberly had some good comments on it, is that every major credit card breach over the last several years has been achieved against companies that have that are PCI DSS compliant, payment card industry data security standard compliant. In other words, they have certified either themselves or with third parties that they have the policies and procedures which are designed to avoid breaches. Yet they are the very entities that have had the largest breaches. So it's very clear that policies and procedures don't alone do it. Real security comes from combining compliance, a lot of which is technology oriented, with the human factor. When you combine the technological aspect of it, the firewalls and the sandboxes and all those things you do, with the human factor, which we like to call the human firewall, that gives you your best chance of achieving actual security. And our goal is not just to provide compliance, but to see that our clients achieve actual security. It probably means a little less business for us, but we think it's better overall for society.
Good. Kim, you want to jump in there? Because I know this is, again, it's a subject near and dear to your heart. Yeah.
So I want to comment on what Robert said. I actually have to look away from the camera and look up on my wall in my office. I have compliance is asking you to put a lock on the door, and security is making sure you lock it every day. So awesome. Your point, Robert, is spot on. So I think we have to go back to what social engineering is. And social engineering, in the way that I describe it, is the method to manipulate people into doing something, providing information, giving access through a physical door, sharing credentials. And the human factor, the key word is human. We are emotional beings. And when I train our clients, or when I give presentations out into the community, it's all about our behaviors and what we are going to do when we open that email. And so many factors play a part because we are those emotional human beings. So when it comes down to making choices about where we save information, making choices about clicking on links or downloading an emails, or even answering the phone and providing information, it all comes to what's in us as humans, what our behaviors are, and most importantly, where we are in that particular point in our lives, in our day, in our business. It's all comes down to choices that we make.
Yeah, well said, both of you. And towards that point, I mean, if we go on to this next slide, uh, and Kim, and for the audience, what you're seeing here is a screenshot of some of the material from Kimberly's standard cybersecurity awareness presentation. We've just kind of taken the screenshot, that's the what you're seeing on the screen, and put the heading on it, if you will, that's appropriate for, okay, this is stuff the leadership team really needs to wrap their head around. And Kim, you talk about this stuff regularly, and Bob, you too have done this. What's your point, Kim, when you talk about this slide?
The first thing we talk about is most businesses agree that people are the greatest asset, right? Cultures are an asset to a company. Skill and experience, they're all assets to a company. Relative to information security, people are the weakest link. And they're the weakest link because A, they don't understand the threats. They don't understand the cyber criminals. They don't understand that information is an asset that's being stolen, or people, they don't understand that people are being tricked to get access to these cyber criminals, getting access to the information. And all of these insecure behaviors is what makes it easier for the cyber criminals. And when we talk about, you can have the biggest, baddest, best firewall, you can have it configured with the best hardening guides, you can have skilled people, you can have configuration and the latest and greatest of everything. But when it comes to that moment of truth, somebody clicking on a link, all those controls go out the window. You definitely need the controls. To Robert's point, you need the technology. It's very important and it plays a part. But together, the human factor with those technical controls are what's going to create a secure environment and a secure culture.
Yeah, Bob, how do you see that? Like, you go in, you get called as the attorney when there are breaches. What do you see in that space with people this way?
Well, I absolutely agree. I mean that you can trace almost every breach to a human being. It's not necessarily a bad actor. Very often, it's a negligent actor. Although there are a lot of bad actors, employees are the biggest source, either because of their negligence or because of their anger. But I'd also say that it's an interesting issue. People are always looking for creative and innovative people. There is also, and these are people who are who push against boundaries, who push against rules, and there's actually a societal admiration for people who break the boundaries. We like people who go outside the box. The problem here is we're saying that, and people don't understand what happens if you go outside the box. I mean, we're going to go into that hopefully in some detail, but the vulnerability is that people don't understand the impact of what they are doing, and they don't understand why. And by the way, I think the other issue is we have raised technology on such a platform that people believe that, well, if I click on something, it'll be caught. There'll be a firewall. There will be some kind of virus catcher. There'll be something out there. And these people are not interested in zero-day vulnerabilities. These people are not, are not interested in how credentials are stolen and what ports you use and things like that. They're completely unaware of those issues. So it's a combination of people's lack of knowledge. And as I said, I really think one of the issues is that people consider that a value in pushing against these things and trying to violate some of the rules and some of the policies and procedures because they want to put a program they want to click on something, want to put a program on their computer, which sounds great, but it turns out it's just an invitation for someone to insert malware, and then you're gone.
Yeah.
Stan, I want to also piggyback on that because I remember sitting in a meeting with a client of Citadel's, and we had the CIO, we had the director of IT, and we had a couple IT folks in the room, and then we had the compliance manager. She was in the room, and the message that the IT folks sent was, yeah, our stuff will catch it. And what Stan and I picked up on was that's the message that the IT folks are sending to all their employees. You don't have to pay attention. All our controls will
Right.
catch it. And that's the message that IT are sending to the employees. And so leadership is needed to get in between to have this type of a conversation that, yes, while we do have those controls and they are very important, we also need the human factor, the employees, the staff, the partners, the managing partners, the owners, the nonprofits. We need all of those people to understand that things will get through. It's not a matter of if we'll get through, it's
And
when
I've
they.
been there with our IT group because I know what they're thinking is that if they admit that the system is not perfect, they have failed. And as my partner once said, we gave our IT group an unlimited budget and they exceeded it. So, we're wondering how is it that we can apply so many assets and so many resources to technology, to these protections, and then our IT people are saying, yeah, but it's not perfect. How can that be? And the IT people, their natural reaction is, no, we're doing everything we should do, without explaining that it's really kind of binary. That either it's completely perfect, which does not exist, or it's completely imperfect. And 99% perfect is not perfect. It's
That's
just
right.
99% perfect.
That's right. Exactly. And what this discussion is illustrating, and we're going to jump into kind of what do we have to tell our people in a moment, but there's just has to be a recognition in the organization that no matter how good IT is, stuff is going to get through. I mean, you look at this bank we talked to yesterday, right, Kim? 3,000 people managing security. But they're getting attacks, and these attacks are getting through because the malware that is being, and now it's being targeted in their case. It's not, this is very specific. Let's go attack this bank. But every email that comes through is uniquely different from every other email that they've seen, so that you can't simply filter it out. It's coming from different IP addresses than anything they've ever seen. So you can't block the IP addresses. You have to be diligent at the human level. I mean, that's part of that message. And if you look at, I talk about this, I think, in some sense, almost every month. But you look at the Democratic National Committee hack. You look at the Target breach. You look at all of those. And what you find in all of those cases is that one side, this ultra reliance on, IT's managing security, and this not really fully working to change the culture, adapt the culture to this new reality that we've got here, that we have to manage. That's kind of the situation I see ourselves in, that it's now the responsibility of management and the leadership team to overcome this, change the behavior. And that gets to the whole next set of slides. I'm just going to jump ahead to this. These all relate to what does the leadership team have to do? And one of those things, and Kim, jump in here, is teaching people to be vigilant. This is one of your main points that you talk about.
Yeah, one of the my favorite parts about this slide is the picture itself, is that, setting aside what you believe a meeting etiquette is about relative to your smart device and bringing it in and flipping it over or looking at it. If the leadership is in training or is in meetings or in discussions with cybersecurity, if they themselves are looking at their cell phones or not paying attention, that sends a message to the rest of the organization. And I remember two clients in particular. One was the owner. It was a single owner of a private company of about 60 or so people. And I was there and I gave 2 or 3 classes during the day. And he came back in to start every class, to introduce me, but to also send a message to everybody that this is important to me as an owner. And I am making the time, setting the time so all of you can get trained and we can have these types of discussions. That was one example. The other example was I recently gave a training 2 training sessions at a small law firm, and the managing partner, while he had his cell phone, he set it on the table, he didn't look at it once during that presentation. And there were other people, other partners in there, there was other paralegals and secretaries and assistants, and you could see they were kind of looking at him every once in a while when I would say some comment about a particular topic or a particular slide. And he kept his eyes up at the screen or on me the whole time, and he engaged, and he asked questions. And it was a discussion rather than just me up there talking. And that is leadership relative to information security. That is the leadership that we need to influence. It's not just about what to do and what not to do. It's leadership at the top has to pay attention to this stuff and set the tone for these meetings and set the tone for these discussions. And so when we get to this slide, we talk a little bit about that. But we also talk about the employees, and it doesn't matter where you are on the org chart, whether you're a partner, whether you're an owner, whether you're a shipping clerk, whether you're a receptionist, doesn't matter. The cyber criminals need people, and they want to use those people as unwitting accomplices. And if you're not paying attention to this, and the leadership isn't paying attention to this, then you're going to be suckered every time, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Bob?
Not a lot to add. I mean, we see that a lot. I'm not going to go into some of my personal anecdotes because it's embarrassing. But I think what you have to understand from the leadership on down is that this is a very asymmetric relationship. That that defending against cybersecurity the goal has to be 100%. The cyber criminals themselves need one hit to win. And the cost to the cyber criminals is very, very small. I mean, sending out phishing expeditions, whatever it is, all the things we're going to talk about, the cost is very limited to be able to do it. And there's a tremendous return because they only need one hit in order to make it worthwhile. And so what we have to understand from the very top of leadership, and that's what I think these last couple of points that are made on the slide are to, is that from the very top to the bottom, they have to understand that one single failure by any one person in the organization is a complete failure of the entire organization.
Yeah, well said.
Well said.
Yeah, that's right. One failure. Yeah, and understanding as well that what you both just said. I mean, they're targeting the people this way, right, Kim?
Yeah, when we started Citadel, 16, almost 17 years ago, we saw that it was about 50 people that were the target. The cyber criminals are doing bad things or getting access were on the inside of the organization, and 50% was on the outside. Now here we are almost 20 years later after that report, and now it shows that 75% of all of the cyber criminals and all these incidents and breach and thefts and business email compromise is coming from the outside. And we bring it down when we do our training, we bring it down to people as individuals. The targets used to be, websites and servers and bring systems down. Now, because in the last 20 years, the tools have gotten more sophisticated and the manufacturers are paying attention to this. The security device manufacturers and security appliances manufacturers are getting more sophisticated in their configurations and they're paying attention. The part that's lagging is the people part. And so when we talk about this in training, we talk about that the target is now switched to you as an employee. And what does it have to do with you? You have what they want. You have access to information. You are the target. Statistics are showing us now that you're the target. You're already behind the firewall, and you're their way in around all the security controls that the technology people have put in place.
Yeah, since you're saying is all the cyber criminal needs to do is show up and speak French.
Exactly. And if leadership doesn't buy into this and understand that it doesn't matter whether you're a CEO or the person that just saves the files or scans files into a device and saves it somewhere on a server or a mapped drive. If they don't understand that every single one of them are a target, and if the leadership doesn't tell them that they're a target, they're gonna that one that Robert talks about, it's gonna be a heck of a lot more than one.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Bob, you jump in on this. I mean, again, you see breaches on a regular basis, and in all cases, I mean, what's going on here? What is it that,
well,
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So cyber criminals, their goal is to make money. I mean, which,
Okay.
listen, we're lawyers. I mean, we appreciate that. We like that. And if they weren't doing illegal things, they'd be our clients. But I think what's interesting is when we look at this, I would look at the left side of the screen and the right side of the screen, and I would make a real differentiation. The things on the left side of the screen, Social Security numbers, credit card numbers, bank account numbers, all those things, possibly less health information, but a lot of those things are low value theft items. They're things, if you go on the dark web, you'll be able to go, those get into the supermarkets on the dark web where it's basically volume. They, for instance, credit card numbers have a very short shelf life. They get changed and things like that. What really they're looking for is what's on the right side, and you see the big number in that word play, that word out. You see, what's the biggest one? It's information. They're looking for information. There's been a shift. I mean, we still see a lot of credit card theft, but it's sort of, not a huge issue. There's a societal cost to it, but it's sort of built into the economy right now. What really people are looking for is the ability to access information or deny access to information. That's where things like ransomware and wiperware come in. It's much easier, and there's a much more direct connection between a cyber criminal being able to hold your information hostage or steal important information, business information, intellectual property, trade secrets, and things like that. Those are very high value. Those have a very long shelf life. And in terms of ransomware, there's a one-on-one representation. They hold your information. Hostage, and they demand money. It's a very quick turnaround. And even though the numbers appear to be small, it's in the, I guess, getting into the 5 and maybe 6 figures. That number is relatively small. It's still a tremendous return on investment. So, what cyber criminals want information. I would go back, by the way, to the last slide and mention that the issue that, thank you, that
Sure. Yeah.
What leadership also has to understand is that they actually are the ultimate target, because what they're using a lower level target for, anyone with access to the system, is to work their way into the system to get what's on the next page, to get the information. And that means they have to go up the food chain, they have to get to people with higher credentials, but they start with anyone who gets who's behind the firewall. Anyone who has access, no matter how limited their access is, they can use that to delve into the system and get more information. So, sorry to make you go backwards. I know that's
no problem. I'm a pro. I can go forwards, backwards, whatever. So happy to.
We'll go back to a 2-and-1 count, and we'll see what happens.
Don't throw a curveball. Yeah. So if we now moving forward in this direction, notice I was able to go back and forth and not get lost. Kimmy, you want to say some more about this chart as well before we go to the next one?
I think the final comment, the only comment I have, is the information, no matter what it is much more valuable and has much more value to the owners of that information than to the cyber criminals who will sell it off. It's priceless for business, but they're going to sell it off, inexpensively or cheaply, as little as they can.
I think it's very important to note that when you think about it, the cost of a credit card breach, someone who steals it sells those credit card numbers for pennies.
Hmm.
literally for pennies. The cost to society is hundreds of times that, hundreds
Yeah.
and thousands of times. So it gives you an idea of, the values and
Hmm.
the cost, and the societal cost of these things.
Right, right. Uh, and again, that's a good point without going down that rabbit hole that what the costs are to society versus the cost to the benefits to the criminals. Just this is such a big area where we as a nation need to be doing better. In part, the opportunity we have is to, as a nation, do better by each individual organization doing better, bottom up approach, if you will, taking advantage of the kinds of societal things that are out there. I mean, this could be a good time for a shout out to Cyber Lab LA, for example. On the technology side, the IT companies, the IT people can do a better job of protecting the network using feeds from LA Cyber Lab. Even with that, we still need things like what we're talking about today. We got to secure the humans, and that in part takes us to this next slide, which is just helping users understand, first of all, what the risks are, but then the consequences of those risks. You look at the right hand side of the screen. I think there's like 14 items here that we've put. We've listed as to the consequences of people making mistakes. So jump in.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it just shows that on the risk side, it really is mistakes. What are the mistakes you make? There's an institutional problem in not establishing a culture of security and a culture of privacy. There's an individual failure to abide by the institutional requirements, and frankly, a failure of the individual to value that person's own privacy, which is the whole nother issue. But then
Mm-hmm.
you look at the consequences, then these are, that's why the cost of a breach is so large. And I'd say one thing that missing there is that we have seen tremendous losses of companies because again the issue is not just loss of information; it's actually shutting down of companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Companies uh, I will not mention my competitors. We've been lucky or good,
Mm-hmm.
one of the two. But we have competitors who have effectively shut down for a couple of weeks and have never and still have not been able to recapture all of their data
Mm-hmm.
because of ransomware, wiperware attacks. And that's a tremendous. I mean, these are talking about putting the two together. The individual that makes these mistakes may put himself or herself out of a job
Mm-hmm.
because not every entity can survive a truly catastrophic attack.
True. Very true. Kim, you want to say something?
This slide, there's a lot going on here, but one of the things that sticks out to me is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The availability is what is most important to the technical people. We want to make sure that the devices are available. We want to make sure that the data itself is available. Leadership, in most cases, are focused more on the confidentiality of information. They want to keep privacy. They want to keep it private. Um, and rarely do I see conversations between leadership and technology and using those words. Another situation came to mind where another law firm of client of Citadel's, they share with us, the managing partner shares with us consistently and repeatedly, confidentiality and sensitivity to this data is our primary concern, and yet they send out all of this data via email without encryption. And that conversation between technology and the leadership it's not happening, or it doesn't seem to be happening in a way that the leadership team understands what it means. And
Mm-hmm.
the consequences are just really scary, and we're seeing it, and I know, Robert, you're seeing it when stuff happens and incidents happen, and people receiving emails that say transfer $1 million to this account. This is just a very short list of the consequences. This doesn't even include the embarrassment factor, the frustration, the downtime. When we were on a panel, I was on a panel with the attorney from the Target breach who sat next to me, and he said the IT department was devastated that this happened on their watch. And the leadership team, they had to balance, especially this particular attorney had to balance between did you do your job versus I empathize with you that this stuff is going to happen no matter how many tools we have in place.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about, I think, is just so absolutely serious, both of you, and it's to the last bullet in the right-hand side of this just chart. Organization out of business. There was this testimony in Congress a couple of years ago that something like 60% of small businesses that got hit with cybercrime were out of business 6 months later. That number always struck me as a little high, and I think in today's world, with more ransomware, which is a lower cost item, if you will, assuming that you recover from it. I think the number is fewer than 60%, but I think it's absolutely defensible to say that short of doing the kinds of things we're talking about, both on this webinar, Securing the Human, and the whole series of webinars that we have been putting together over the last several months, starting with cultural adaptation and leadership. In the absence of those things, 30% of our businesses in the next 3 to 5 years are going to get hit by these cyber attacks, of our mid-sized and smaller businesses, and they're going to go out of business. They just, as you pointed out, Bob, they just do not have the resources to recover from these kinds of consequences. And just as an illustration, I mean, you mentioned that one law firm. They're not discussed in the story, but they're also a subject of the story. Wired magazine has a very good analysis this month of the NotPetya malware that went around the world some time ago and just impacted so many companies. The Wired story is more on Maersk than on the law firm that we won't mention, but it's definitely a challenge. Both the law firm and Maersk came within a hair's breadth, literally being out of business. With the NotPetya attack and things like this. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so now the leadership team has done their job. People do understand the cyber risks and the cyber consequences, and we get back to the first line of defense. That these are the people. Kim, go ahead.
I love this slide. It's almost
I know you do. That's why I said, Kim, go ahead.
I have a question. How did you get small enough people? Is that really small people or a very, very large keyboard?
The magic of computers and technology and images. This is one of my favorite slides because this is where in my training I get everybody fired up that they are my new cyber guardians. From this day forward, you got a new set of eyes. You have leadership as displayed by the leadership that's sitting in the training, and you have a role to play in the first line of defense. And I repeat, yes, we need the technology. Yes, we need the firewalls and the antivirus and the backup. But you also are the first line of defense. Why? Because you as a human, the human factor, have what no technology as of yet has, and that's common sense. You can look at something and make sense of something or not and question it versus an email that comes in and passes all the filters and all of the email filters and all of the controls, technical controls in place. It's still going to reach what we call the endpoint, the user. And that's where they have to pay attention to this as cyber guardians.
You mean the French actually have to be able to tell that these are Brits speaking French and not really Brits, not really French? Sorry, yeah.
You should have asked more questions. That's what I mean. Ask more questions. Be skeptical.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Bob, thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, look, it goes back to the idea that, first line of defense, last line of defense, whatever it is, people have to understand that they're an integral part of the system.
Yeah.
I personally like this slide because we often say the most vulnerable point in any organization stands between the keyboard and the chair, or sits between the keyboard and the chair. And so
That's good.
Yeah,
kind of
well
that
said.
system. But yeah, I mean, unless people recognize, everyone in the organization recognize, top down, recognizes their importance and what they, what role they play, and how broad that role is, then you haven't achieved it. You haven't achieved
Mhm.
what you wanted to do. Everyone is important to the situation.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, this is the first step in the first line of defense. The next chart takes it to the next thing. Okay, so we've done all these, okay, people understand why they're they're the targets and the dangers and the consequences and so on. It's still, okay, what am I supposed to do? And this comes to the next slide, and this whole idea of cyber hygiene. Yeah.
I have I go crazy about this because
Okay.
the kinds of stuff that we see, the kinds of information that people are willing to give up voluntarily and make public is astounding. The idea that people would give hackers, would give criminals or bad actors access to their birthdays, where they work, what their position is, where they went to school, the names of their children, the names of their parents' birth dates, where they travel, the fact that they are currently traveling in an area, and they announce we will be in an area where we cannot, where we have no connectivity. Like my brother did the other day. I mean, it's astounding that people would do that.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, if you think about it for a second, well, how do people design their passwords? What information do we need to do? Why would someone ever put their mother's maiden name online when that is one of the most common validating questions? All these things, people think about it for a minute and say, yeah, it makes Facebook a little less fun. On the other hand, it also creates that in itself is something that people are aware of what information they're giving up. It would be a tremendous,
Oh,
it'd be a tremendous benefit to their companies and to their friends and society in general, things like that.
hmm
So yes, I have opinions on that. Of course, that's talking from someone who basically hides away from social media. I'm somewhat scared of heights, and I'm somewhat scared of social media. So there we go.
got it. Just, yeah, I hear you. Well, and we had a situation, Kim, this goes back 6 or 7 years, where we ended up representing a company in a lawsuit against their bank over an email, a transaction, a transfer of $600,000 that the client claimed was illegitimate. But the way the whole thing started, the $600,000 payroll fraud, was that someone in the payroll department of the organization received an email looking like it came from Facebook, talking about this person's junior high school reunion.
Yeah.
Click on this link. Well, she clicked on that link. That that was the opening of a piece of malicious software uh, getting installed on the person's computer that had a keylogger. From then on, all of this person's keystrokes were captured, including the user ID and password to the online bank account. And out of that, $600,000 of fraud manifested. Talking about the link between social media and cybercrime, just that way. And Kim, you look like you're ready to kind of jump in on this as well with your own set of stories. Yeah. Yeah.
It comes down to, again, the human factor and changing our behaviors. And what we say in training is, and not to beat up on Facebook, but we're going to beat up on Facebook anyways, is when you get a Facebook email or a friend request or a message, change your behavior, fire up your email or fire up your browser, log into Facebook and look at it there. That will dramatically decrease the risk of getting hit by an attack on Facebook, because there is virtually no way that most users can look at a Facebook email and determine whether it's real or not. So remove the risk And going forward, we say you don't click on Facebook, you don't click on Twitter emails, you don't click on LinkedIn friend requests.
And that's everything. That's also when you get something from a bank, when you get something
Hmm.
from the post office.
Exactly. It's
Anything.
changing
God
that.
forbid you get something from the IRS because they don't
Yeah.
know how to use.
Right. Or a phone call from the IRS, right? They're
Uh-huh.
not going to. And once you have these conversations with employees, it really truly, in my experience, starts to go, oh, okay, well, that's easy. It doesn't cost anything. It's a couple of extra keystrokes, but most people have Facebook open in another window anyways. And then we talk to leadership and we say, if you don't want them to have Facebook at their desk, then we talk to IT and we put controls in place so they can't even go to Facebook.com. Everybody's got smartphones and Androids and iPhones and iPads. Go use your personal devices to go to Facebook and LinkedIn and all these other ones, and UPS and
Yeah.
FedEx. It's
Yeah.
this changing of behavior that starts with the leadership, because they got to stop clicking on the links too, and pushing that down to all employees. And that's just one piece of cyber hygiene, just
Yeah.
one. There's
Yeah.
so many others. This is just a really short list.
Well, and that point just brings to mind the great quote of Benjamin Franklin: distrust and caution are the parents of security. And we've part of what we've got to do, part of what the leadership has to teach is distrust and caution that way. That's a critical piece of the leadership team's opportunity here.
Yeah, and this is, I think, what's interesting here is this goes beyond the issue that um, that if you link into your work from home, or if you manage to get on an exchange for something, then you have certain obligations because you've got a direct connection
Hmm.
to your firm, to your company. These are most of the things we're looking at on this list are issues that have nothing to do with that. That's just what you do at home. And generally, we say, look, what you do in the privacy of your home is your own business until it impacts the world around you, until
Yeah.
it impacts your friends and your coworkers and your employers and things like that. And
Hmm.
that's why all these issues that you do on your own, you say, well, I'm at home. I don't need to worry about this. Yet every one of these could have an impact on it.
That's
Every
right.
one of these are ways that someone can find out enough about you to use that to not necessarily to attack you directly, but I mean, you say that, my boss, start talking about your boss. That's the reason why we don't like people to talk about their work environment, because it gives people an insight into the work environment and allows them to target other people in the environment and understand how things work and who has responsibility for things and who's really important there and who's not
Hmm.
so smart and things like that.
Yeah. Well,
All the
it,
things
it
to worry about.
Yeah, it goes to the point, Robert, that a good cyber criminal wanting to get into a particular company is going to do his or her homework on Facebook, on LinkedIn, build the org chart of who reports to whom, who works there, all of those things, so that they can launch a spear phishing campaign that is going to find its way through to success. I'm looking at the clock. We're getting up to the top of the hour, so let's go on to the next slide, which is a different flavor of what we've been so far. Has been, here's all the things you've got to teach the people, but then in addition to that, the leadership team has another responsibility, and that's to hold people accountable. And oftentimes, as Kim, you and I have spoken, this means, in fact, executives holding themselves accountable.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I remember going into a client of ours a couple of years ago, and we had just done a phishing attack on them, and who were the worst culprits were the executives. So
Yeah.
you want to jump in, because I know this matters to you, and you talk about this a lot.
And this is a tough one, because this is where IT really doesn't have any authority, if you will, to hold people accountable up the food chain, if you will, or up the totem pole. And that's why this leadership is so responsible. And that's the toughest part, or one of the toughest things, but it's the most important in leadership,
Yeah.
is they themselves have to follow through on this. And they have these leaders that I talk to have a lot of misconceptions about security. Um, And it comes from discussions with technology people. It comes from, well, I don't want to do that because it's going to slow me down, or I don't want to do, I'll accept the risk. And I don't want a password. All of this plays a part in sending the message to how the rest of the organization is going to perceive security and how the business is going to manage it. So it has to happen. And notice this is not a technical discussion. Accountability is, what are we going to accept as a risk within our organization, and how are we going to keep people accountable, including the leaders? It's a tough one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And this one also, I think, Robert, has legal implications if the organization doesn't hold themselves accountable.
Look, I hate to tell you, but if there is no accountability, if there's no consequence for bad behavior is going to continue. That's
Mhm.
speaking. Speaking as I've been observing of human behavior for a long time now,
Yeah.
and that's what happens. And I think also that unless the leadership team holds themselves and others accountable, that there's not sending the right message. They're not sending the message that there is a cost to doing this. I mean, you have to look at this, and at a certain point, you say that there's certain things you cannot help, but most of these things really have to be treated as bad behavior. The failure to take the obvious steps to follow the rules, to go beyond the system, to try to debug the system, that may sound fun. It may get, there's sort of an immediate gratification to it, but it's not a long-term, it's not viable. It doesn't create a viable entity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I would also say, like everything else we've talked about here, it starts at the top, that it doesn't work if the leadership holds people other than themselves accountable. Leadership first has to look at themselves and say, did we establish the culture? Did we demonstrate the culture? And after, and do the right things. And after that, then they can start holding other people accountable. And then it will make a difference. Just like showing up and paying attention at a training session sets the stage for other people understanding that this is important. It's the same in this. They have to be accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a simulation, computer simulation 20 years ago or so, looking at how any set of behaviors can manifest inside an organization. And they found kind of three things. That one, there had to be clear statements as to what the objectives, behavioral objectives were. Second, people had to be held accountable for meeting those objectives. And the third thing, and this goes again to the leadership, that people have to hold people accountable for holding other people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
If I see you messing up, I've got a responsibility to hold you accountable for that. And if I don't hold you accountable, if nobody holds me accountable to hold you accountable, it won't happen. So there needs to be those layers that way. And this loops back. I mean, this now becomes, if you will, a promo for webinars 1 and 2 in this series, where we spent a lot of time talking about exactly this kind of leadership and how you manifest this throughout the organization. So when all is said and done, here we are. We've got, if the leadership team is doing its job, meeting its cultural responsibilities in a way, we now have the organization are now cyber guardians. A lot to kind of pull together here, but I'm hopeful that over the course of the last 45, 50 minutes, 53 minutes at this point, we've kind of indicated what these things are, what the necessities and even some of the pitfalls are in doing this. Any final thoughts before we kind of wrap up through the last handful of slides here?
Actually, my final thought is this picture, which is not in my slide deck, but this picture just reminded me of every time I do my training, I have people come up at the end and say, well, what about this? And what about this? And it gets a discussion going, and they start applying it to their own information that they have access to and their own processes, that operational processes that they're involved in day to day. And that to me is really exciting when the users or the people in the class or the trainings or the leadership even comes up and says, well, what should we do here and what should we do here? And it's this discussion. Stan, you always say it's information security is about the discussion and having these types of discussions and conversations and allowing people to come ask questions that again are not necessarily technical in nature. They need to have guidance on what to do and when to do it and when not to do it. So this is just a great slide.
Cool. Good. Robert?
Yeah, I would just say it's interesting because I look at this and I think the flip side of security is privacy. And privacy is getting a lot of play these days because of the GDPR and California's Consumer Privacy Act and things like that. They're not separated. The fact is that we are turning from a culture and a society that does not respect the privacy of people's information to a world where the generator of that information, the individual, has ownership and control of their own information. And I think that's actually one of the starting points that people have to realize, that they own and they control their own data. And once they understand that, I think if they understand that they actually have the tools to create a secure environment. So the two really go together. And that's sort of what's been missing, I think, in our understanding, that people have to take that people have ownership and they have responsibility. It's not something that they can hand off to someone else. And so I look at that, I look at that as when I see security, I see on the flip side of those cards, privacy. So
No, I absolutely hear you, and I think that's part of kind of, if you will, the whole vision of SecureTheVillage is to let's bring this dialogue out into the open and have this dialogue so that we can all collectively do this better job. Yeah, Kim, you look like you want to add to this.
I just love this stuff. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I could talk about
Yes,
this
you
all
are.
day long.
Right. Well,
right.
and so that's a good segue actually to the next slide. That hopefully, if those of you in the audience, wants to see some more information on this whole subject, and by God, there's a lot of it. We've just tried to capture some of the highlights. But this is the resource kit that we've put together on securing the human. The draft publication from NIST is on there. Bob, a couple of your things, yours and Mike's. Kim, an older awareness training set of slides from you on this. There's some posters that we've picked up over the years. I'm sure they're out of date. We could get more of them, but this is currently what we've got on here. But use those. Just help engender that secure culture. That's ultimately, and it's not just for the people, the users even. It extends into IT. It helps IT make sure that they're part of this culture as well. They have to understand why they are being tasked to do certain things that are not just about availability, keeping the systems up and running. And to me, the Equifax breach is an illustration of that. Had there been a robust, secure culture, the likelihood of those websites that were open to the hackers, of those being open, is lower than the reality of what it was, that they were just wide open, and not just the ones that got breached, but there were others as well that were waiting to be breached and weren't. And ultimately, and you look at Equifax, and we've got the testimony of the former CEO in Congress. There's no culture of security at all, so it's not at all to be unexpected that IT wasn't doing their role on security. Nobody was doing their role from the CEO on, in fact, from the board on down in the Equifax breach. So here's some resources. Take a look at those. Moving ahead, our next webinar is, in fact, we're going to loop back to IT. How do you manage the security of the IT infrastructure? A piece of that is what's on the Secure the Village resource page, the code of basic IT security management practices that we built a year ago. As we say, not using that guide, that code, to set your IT infrastructure to secure it is like drinking and driving. These are basic things. So that's what we're going to talk about on September 4th. We're still identifying who the appropriate guests are on that, but put that on your calendar for a month from now. 10 a.m. Pacific, and it's part of the whole regular series. I mean, we try to do these so that they're really practical, they're real world. We provide guidance as to how to do things, and obviously connected to the resource kit. Here's the schedule. The next one, October 4th, managing security of the IT infrastructure, but then put down November 1st, December 6th, and into January 2019, when we're finally going to talk about cyber risk and insurance. This is just one example, these webinars of the things that here we do at Secure the Village, the webinar series, focus groups, and so on. That we've got, and here's for more information. There's of course my contact information, Bob, yours, at the law firm, Kimberly, yours. For home users, one of the things we all of our clients take and they distribute. We've been publishing Citadel for, my God, 8 or 9 years, a weekly newsletter that's a combination news of the week and a weekend vulnerability and patch report. It's all free. You can sign up to the Citadel website. News of the week are typically 25 to 30 stories on cybersecurity, headline in the opening paragraph. So you don't have to read everything, but you can go through those and click the links on those that, oh, that's an interesting story, I want to know more about it. And they get into not just, the kinds of cyber things we're talking about, but also cyber freedom. How are we protecting, our 2018 election and things of that nature? There's a recent story of Iran attacking other countries in a cyber way that makes it on the news, and also is the weekend vulnerability and patch report. And for home users, this is a guide to, okay, here's programs that you may be running on your computer that it's time to update. Patches came out on that over the week, so that's free. It's a free resource of Citadel's.
Let me just jump in and say,
go ahead,
it's one of the best things I get.
Wow.
Read on Sunday
Thank you.
to read that. It's really a tremendous summary. It's sort of like I read The Economist, so I know what's going on in the world. You read that. If you get this, you will not regret it.
Thank you.
Wow.
That's so nice of you. Thank you. Yeah. And then, Bob, your firm, our firm, we're sponsors of this. If you want marketing sponsorship opportunities for either the webinar series or other things that we do, email us at info@securethevillage.org. You can visit us for that as well. So with that, I want to thank all of you for the attendees being a part of the presentation, and very much thank both of you so much for spending your time with us this hour. And really, I hope, and I think we've achieved our objective, that we have helped organizations turn their people and organizations into cyber guardians. So thank you all for this.
Thanks, Dan.
Great.
Thanks very much, Dan. Thanks to everyone who attended.
Great, thank you. And we are adjourned.